This week I'm only going to be vibe coding.
Why is it always doing something crazy? So it keeps making random changes that are totally unrelated. I just dropped a bunch of unnecessary comments again. It just keeps adding these comments. Wow, that took forever. I messed up again. Alright, this sucks. This one was a dub. Okay, that actually did great.
Our software engineers cooked. What's going on, everyone? My name is Ben Wall and I'm a backend software engineer. This week I'm only going to be vibe coding. If anyone's not familiar with vibe coding, it's basically where you give instructions to the AI through chat window and then you let the AI code for you. So for this challenge, I'm going to be using Cursor. Let's see what models we have. Okay, it looks like we have Claude, GPT-4o, and then Gemini 2.5 Pro. So I want to try all those out this week too and let you know which one I think's best. And also at the end of the week, I'm going to give a recap on how it went, some of the good things and bad things with the challenge. Probably won't be needing much of this either, so let's get rid of that.
We're start out by setting up some of our cursor rules. Alright, let's just start with some of the stuff I've noticed so far. Don't write unnecessary comments. Don't write any AI slop. What else? Now we gotta add some threats. Alright, that seems like a good start for now. Before we get into the first task, let's take a look at the analytics for my account on Cursor. So I recently just started using it probably a couple weeks ago. I think this is comparing me to other people at my company and how I stack up in like lines of code accepted and tabs accepted. Seems like I've used a decent amount of credits here, but we can take a look after the week and see where I'm at. So the task I found was in one of our Python services, we have some of our database calls that are synchronous. So this is an issue because synchronous stuff blocks the event loop. And I'm not going to be able to show any code, but I'll try and keep you guys updated on how it's going. So I told it to convert all the class function use cases from sync to async using 2-thread. So find them all and update them, and then update the unit test. This is not really what I wanted. Let me try and feed it an example here. Okay, it didn't do what I wanted again, so I'm adding more context, giving an example of what I wanted to wrap. This is like where it can get annoying. Trying to do this all through the AI is just like you could go in and do this yourself pretty quickly. All right, it seems like it's on a better track here, but it's still messed up. I'm gonna give it more context. Okay, I'm gonna try again, and no joy. All right, I'm giving it a specific example. Why is it always doing something crazy? All right, I finally got it working for one table. Maybe that's the approach. You start small, give it a good example to work off of, and then kind of expand on that instead of trying to go for the one shot. All right, now I'm gonna see if it can do the rest. All right, seems to be doing pretty good at finding all the methods here. So it keeps making random changes that are totally unrelated. Do not get this. All right, I was finally able to finish this one. Let's check the diff here. So we had 9 files changed, 42 insertions, 25 deletions. Oh, that definitely took way longer than if I just did it myself. So I got a few comments on one of my merge requests from last week. So I'm gonna try and use Cursor to adjust my code based on those comments and see what happens. First comment was just refactoring 2 similar methods to use one common method. Yeah, this one's probably not worth it because they are similar, but they have different underlying types, so it just becomes a little hairy trying to use a type variable. I don't think it's worth it for readability. All right, for the next comment was actually an issue with the code. I feel like this one's pretty easy to do without AI, but I feel like AI might struggle on this one. I'm trying to move something from one service to another, and I gave it context to both files, but the variable names in one service are different than the other, so I don't think it'll do very well on this, but we'll see. Yeah, why is it like, I know you guys probably can't see, but it just dropped a bunch of unnecessary comments again, which is annoying when I told it not to. I think I got it now. Why does it just keeps adding these comments. So there's a way that you can optimize the code. So I'm asking it to do that. All right, so it looks like it's good, but it broke some unit tests. So now I'm gonna ask it to fix those. Wow, it took forever. I was finally able to fix these unit tests. Total stats, we have 351 insertions, 8 deletions. It's about 4 o'clock. I just finished up for the day. I'm gonna go do something active. We're all on the first day of the challenge. I feel like Cursor held me back a little bit. All right, we're back for day 2. I'm gonna first start by updating the Cursor rules I set yesterday. So I said, do not make any changes without my approval or you'll be fired. Don't write any inline comments. Doc strings are fine. You are a professional developer that writes maintainable code. And lastly, you are not a hero. Stick to the changes we've discussed. I have to address one more comment from the merge request from yesterday, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to update the model as well. Let me try Gemini 2.5 Pro Max, see how that goes. So I fed in the context of the relevant line numbers, and I've given a lot of details on what I want changed, so I think it should be able to do this one correctly. I didn't get it right for the first time. I'm trying again with giving it a different file to look at. We got it working. Let's see how the tests are doing. Okay, the existing test passed, but I want to add a new test for the new logic. Okay, it looks good. Just added a bunch of unnecessary comments. So. All right, I think this looks good. Let me run the test, see if it passes. All right, nice, it passed. So now I'm just going to commit this, and then we can move on to the next thing. Cooked up a nice little breakfast here.
Not really sure how much coding I'll be able to do today. I have to review a couple documents and then I have a bunch of meetings. That's the thing with being a software engineer. You don't just code all day, there's more stuff to it. If you want to know more about what I do during the week for work, definitely check out the last couple videos I've made, gone in depth on that.
It's a little before 2 right now, finally back in the IDE. Picking up this new task, should be pretty small. So this is a pretty old Lambda and the code's not very great. So I'm just telling it to create a data class to organize the data so it's easier to work with. Essentially this data class is gonna be a representation of a row in the CSV. So now I want it to create or to transform the CSV rows into a list of the internal representation. So I'm basically, it messed up again. I'm telling it to put it in a certain function. That seems to be working now. I need to loop through the CSV rows and generate the data. I need to do some calculation. I'm telling it the specific branch of the if statement to update. All right, so all the tests are passing, but I want to add some more checks for the new logic. So I told it I wanted to add 2 unit tests, basically gave a 1-sentence description of each one. Finally got the test passed. It was just one small data issue. Now it should be good to create the merge request and get a review.
Just wrapped up working a few minutes ago. Honestly, didn't get to do much coding today. Some days will just be like that though. It's definitely a better day than yesterday. Gemini 2.5 Pro seemed to be a bit faster. It's really hard to tell because I don't use the chat that much. I am still a lot slower than if I just did it myself for some of these tasks. Like the ones today, probably at least 50%, if not 75% slower using the chat than actually doing the work myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back for day 3. For today's task, we have a feature flag that gates an experience for our users, and we want to dial that up to 100%. So we'll just be removing some code and cleaning up some of the tech debt. I'll give the agent some good context on what we want to remove, what we're going to keep, and what I want it to do. All right, this sucks. I basically just have to tell it what to do when I could just go in and do it myself. This task is like a larger refactor, I guess you could say. I'm basically just telling it to remove these specific variables that we have set because it can't figure it out and all of its references. I think we might be in a place now where all the source code's updated. Let me see if the integration tests run. Integration tests are green. That's great. Now let's move on to the unit tests. Finally finished up that task. Final stats, 11 files changed, 774 insertions, 1,934 deletions. So again, this task took longer. Doing it via the chat, it was pretty painful, honestly. Yo, what up? We're back. It's Thursday. We got about 45 minutes to crank. This task is just adding a few columns to a database and then making the relevant change to the service. I'm actually going to feed the requirements from the ticket to see if it can make the changes by itself. It's only adding 2 columns, so I feel like it should be able to do this. All right, this one was a dub. I was able to interpret the requirements from the ticket, make the changes. Total stats. 2 files, 11 insertions. So they have minimal time, but I think it was a little bit faster than if I did it. That's cool. I'm going to work on the other piece of the change now. I'm going to try and feed it the same requirements I fed into the previous change. Let's see how it can do. I think I gave it both the files it needs to change, so hopefully it can make the change. All right, so I made the changes correctly. Now I'm just telling it to update the unit tests. For the second piece of the work, finish that up. It went well. 42 insertions, 4 deletions. I'm overall happy with the tool for this one.
Happy Friday, last day of the challenge. Looking at my work calendar, I only have 2 meetings today, so it should be a good day to test out vibe coding again. Let's get after it.
First task today is just responding to some comments in my merge request. So these will be some small changes. So I think this will be a dub. I'm going to change the model to 01 and test that out. So I'm feeding it the exact comment in the merge request, and then I'm going to give it the file as context where it's at. Let's see if it can figure it out. Wow, it seems like this model is insanely slower already. The agent doesn't seem to be updating the code. All right, I don't know. Model's not working. Switch back to Claude 3.7. I'm giving it the same prompt I gave O1. That one worked. Now there's one more comment I need to address. Okay, cool. Test pass. I was able to update all the unit tests correctly. The stats on this one, 5 files changed, 17 insertions, 20 deletions. Not too bad. I feel like that was probably a tad slower than me doing it, but still pretty comparable. Next task is moving some code from one service over to another. We're trying to kill some of our microservices. First, I'm going to give it the requirements from the ticket I made. Telling it the specific function I want to update to. Seems to do better when you spoon feed it more. I did well. Now I'm telling it to update the unit tests. We'll see how it does with this unit test file. I think it's like a couple thousand lines long. I had a few meetings between now and the last clip, but that task was 108 insertions, 8 deletions, and then 3 files changed. Now let's get wired in.
The next thing I'm going to work on is an extension of what I was just working on. So we need to record some stuff to a database. The database is already set up within the service, so we essentially just need to convert some internal model to what the database expects. Okay, nice, you got that correct. Cool. Okay, that actually did great.
Matching up the data took longer than expected, but I just committed those changes. Now I'm just going to verify it's working as expected. Just finished this task up. 5 files changed, 222 insertions, 4 deletions. That's going to be the last thing I work on today.
Let's take a look at my stats for the week. Accepted 1,600 lines of code. I don't really know how these credits translate to actual dollars. Not too much to take from this. Let's recap this week's vibe coding challenge. First off, I just want to say I'm not a prompting expert. I've done a little bit with ChatGPT, but this is really my first time vibe coding. So take my results with a grain of salt. First question, are software engineers cooked? I would say totally not. There are some areas where you can excel vibe coding, but the majority of the work for a software engineer is like maintaining code and also the stuff outside of code that can't be automated. But I feel like in this challenge, it didn't do great with already existing code and trying to like refactor or make any changes to that. Now, will I keep using vibe coding? I think I will keep using it, but not very often. You have to find the right use case for it. In Cursor, I really enjoy the tab feature. It saves a lot of keystrokes, so I'll definitely keep using that. And then integrate vibe coding or prompting wherever I see fit. Now, what do I think the best model is? I had decent success with Gemini and Claude. I tried O1, but it was like insanely slow and it didn't want to make any of the code changes for some reason, so I stopped using that one quickly. Don't really know too much about the models, but couldn't really tell the difference between Claude and Gemini. Now on to some positives from the challenge. So vibe coding is really good at repetitive tasks. So if you give it one example, it can usually take that on to other use cases and do it pretty quickly. I also noticed it was pretty good at adding new logic. So let's say you wanted to add a new function or like new parameter to a function, or add like new class, new service, anything like that. It's usually pretty good. Basically does well when you don't need to give it a bunch of context, or like it doesn't need a bunch of context on what you're doing. Also throughout the challenge, not necessarily vibe coding, but there is the ask feature through Cursor. So you basically ask it like what this file is doing, or you can ask it what it thinks you should do, or like you could ask it for different options on how you want to implement a solution or something like that. I thought that was pretty good. It's similar just to like use cases for ChatGPT, but it's nice it's integrated within the IDE, so you don't have to go like copy code and paste it in the browser. Now onto the negatives of vibe coding. I thought it really struggled on refactoring existing code. So I gave it some, pretty simple like refactoring of existing code, and it just did not perform well. Had trouble like updating the unit tests and stuff like that. I don't know if that's just like a skill issue with prompting, but just really did enjoy that. And most tasks for refactoring took way longer with vibe coding than just doing it yourself. Maybe that's just because you have like historical context on, what the service does and what you want to do. Whereas like the AI, you have to give it all the context. So you basically have to spoon feed it all the background information. And then at that point, like, you could have just done it yourself way faster. And the last negative is just, it seemed to be good for small changes. Like I didn't have much luck with one-shotting changes. So I tried towards the end of the week, just keeping it small, and it seemed to do a lot better. But at that point, like it's hard for the AI to be quicker than you already are in the IDE. So that's definitely one downside of like, you have to give it all the context, and then by the time you do that, you're probably slower than if you just did it yourself. So overall, this week I felt like I learned a lot. Some stuff I will keep using and add to my toolbox. Obviously, excited to not be full vibe coding because I feel like it held me back in some areas, but overall had fun doing the challenge, so that's all that matters. Keep work interesting. Appreciate everyone watching. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video. Thank you.